Every Premier League club's 2024 rated with a big fat grade from A down to U. We're going to start with Manchester United. What goes in their favour has to be the fact they got rid of Ten Hag, who, in my opinion, nowhere near good enough. They did win the FA Cup, obviously, in 2024, but their league finished 8th. They're currently 14th in the Premier League in this current season. So in this video, it'll be across, obviously, the back end of last season of 2024 and obviously now. The transfer window has to factor in as well. I think Lenny Yoro was a good signing. I look at De Ligt. I think Mazraoui. I think they're good signings. So that definitely goes towards a positive grade for Manchester United. But the on-form performance is absolutely embarrassing. And Ruben Amorim's 7-game start as Manchester United manager is worse than Ten Hag's final 7 games in terms of the record. So it's absolutely embarrassing how the club's being run. There are holes in the ceiling. It's leaking. They can't even afford a plumber. But they're cutting people's wages, putting people on redundancy, asking the taxpayer for a new stadium. It feels like the optimism of Ineos coming in, what feels like about a year ago today, as I'm recording this video. The optimism from that has kind of evaporated, in my honest opinion. I'm going to give Manchester United a big fat U, but let me know what you think in the comments down below. It's an embarrassment. On to Everton. Survival in the Premier League with this current squad of players. It feels like it's just a survival club at the moment, which is completely ridiculous for the size of Everton Football Club. It's still a massive testament, in my opinion, that they've been in and around there. They've never been relegated from the Premier League, which is something they can still hold on to. Look at Aston Villa, look at Newcastle United, for example. Manchester City have obviously been relegated out of the Premier League. So Everton staying. Sean Dyche will always give them a chance. I think they're going to be more than fine this season. But just the way I'm talking about Everton, it is a little bit grim. It's a little bit flat. Obviously, the Freaking Group came over and has taken over Everton as well. They've got a new stadium next year. But as we're doing this video, Everton, it just feels bang average, doesn't it? It can't be an A, can't be a U. It's probably just a C. I think they're just passing. I think they're just floating. Not every club can do what Aston Villa have done or Newcastle United and spent a lot of money. Not in a bad way, but they've spent and they've invested in the squad as big football clubs in their own right, and they got into the Champions League at various points. Everton are a big club who deserve that kind of investment. They just simply don't have it at the moment. Decent squad, still got the England keeper there, Decore. I don't mind it. Branthwaite kept him. It looks like they can get some good money for him as well. I think he'll be fantastic. We're going to give Everton a C. Crystal Palace, their 2024, very, very strange because at the start of 2024, you think about Adam Wharton coming in from Blackburn Rovers. The back end of Crystal Palace, obviously, with Glasner coming in for an ailing Roy Hodgson. He was a breath of fresh air. 3-4-3, Elise, Eze, Mateta, unbelievable. And you feel that it's just so, sometimes football's so depressing because if that front three could have stayed together for another year, they could have been pushing for European football. They could have been pushing to win a cup. It would have been one of the most dangerous front threes in European football. And I'm not even gassing. It would have been. The rest of the side, I'm not saying is, but Mark Gahey as well, it would have been unbelievable. Unbelievable, this Crystal Palace side. They lose Elise, and you feel they've been a little bit disjointed at the start of the season. But then they have turned their form around. There's only one loss in the last 5, couple of wins in there as well. Against Man City, I watched them very recently. Very, very good. They're a good side. I like Parish, how he manages the club. With all due respect, Palace are quite a small club, and to keep them in the league with, a relatively decent outgoings, they don't spend loads of money. Glasner's an exciting manager. If you're selling talent to Bayern Munich, Elise, something's going right. Because Elise came in from Reading, I think it was. So the Palace system is working. I'm going to give Crystal Palace a B. They're going to survive easily as well in the Premier League. Wolverhampton Wanderers. This is an interesting one because Gary O'Neill built up a lot of credit in my bank from what he did at the start of last season for Wolves. Very impressive against Liverpool at the start of last season. I'm talking about Chelsea, Manchester City. Big results against those sides. Pedro Neto is fantastic. But then they've lost Neto. They've lost Kilman. They've beaten Manchester United recently. It's a bit like in boxing. If you finish a round in boxing strong, you end up leaning towards the judge's favour. Because Wolves have finished this season strong, I think finished this calendar year strong, a big win against Manchester United. It was embarrassing, really, what Cunha was doing to that Manchester United midfield. I actually think Victor Pereira is a fantastic addition. He's very, very highly rated. I know coming into the Premier League, it's always a bit of a gamble. But ultimately, Gary O'Neill, it wasn't working. I think he had to turn on the players for his own sake, in my opinion. Sometimes it gets so bad in football, you do have to just slag off the players. It does happen every now and then. You have to give them the Alex Ferguson hair dryer treatment, and it didn't work. It didn't galvanise the side. and ultimately Wolves were in a position where they could have been relegated when there's not much quality in and around them. If Wolves just played to their level with Cunha, Hwang up front, Larson up front, these guys, I think Semedo right back, they're fantastic. The keeper, I like Sarr. I think they've got more than enough to stay in the league. When you look at Southampton, so really there's only 2 positions to get relegated from. Ipswich have got a League One Championship spine, doing very, very well to be in the position they're in, but only 12 points this season for Ipswich. It's going under the radar how relatively poorly they're doing, and Leicester City as well. If Wolves got relegated with these 3 sides, it would be an embarrassment, in my honest opinion. Wolves are a big club. Back end of last season, I'm going to give them a B. I think it's okay, but they should be doing a little bit better, in my opinion, maybe in the transfer market, but what do I know about the ownership? Leicester City, I have to give these guys a good grade, because to get relegated out of the Premier League as Premier League champions is a hard hit. FA Cup winners in the last couple of years. They were in the Champions League with Craig Shakespeare in the knockout stages. For them to bounce straight back up with Enzo Maresca playing great football, ironically, at the start of 2024, they fell off a little bit and they could have bottled a league position, which would have been unprecedented in Championship history, promotion history, because at this time last year, in December last year, they were massive favourites to get promoted. They must have been 95% favourites to get promoted. They had such a points gap. I think it was 15, 20 points on Ipswich and sides like that. It dwindled, and Enzo Maresca just about got them up late on. So ultimately, that has to go in their favour, though. Getting promotion automatics, not worrying about playoffs and stuff like that is always big. And Leicester City have given themselves a chance to stay in the Premier League this season. The issue is they've had to sack Steve Cooper. Thought that was the wrong appointment in the first place. They've not been able to add additions. Nothing against them. Not every club can spend billions. But you look at Bobby Reid coming in, IU coming in. It's not exciting. Wout Fez is still at the club, so I can't give them anything higher than a B just for that alone, with all due respect to Leicester. I like Ruud van Nistelrooy. The league is beginning to look like the 3 clubs that got promoted out of the Championship are going to get relegated again, and that's a damn indictment on how hard it is to break into the Premier League. You look at Nottingham Forest; they've survived by the skin of their teeth with Steve Cooper a couple of years ago, and you wonder how pivotal that will be in the next few years, next 5 to 10 years. If they get into the Champions League this season and they build a platform to go on and with their ownership and be ambitious like they were when they first came up, all because of Steve Cooper keeping them up a couple of years ago. It says so much about Nottingham Forest, but also it says a lot that maybe that window's shut, and what Nottingham Forest being able to do, spend a load of money as soon as they get promoted to keep them in the league and then kick on again. Can Leicester do that? No. Did Ipswich do that? No. Southampton couldn't do that. And can Sheffield United, Burnley, can these clubs do that when they get promoted inevitably out of the Championship this season? Leicester City, I'm going to have to give them a B. Yeah. Ipswich Town, I have to give these guys a fantastic grade. I do, because it's all relative. Leicester City should be in the Premier League, in my honest opinion. They're a Premier League club, and deservedly so, in my honest opinion. But Ipswich have been out of the Premier League for decades. They spent the longest period of time ever in the 2nd division to not get promoted out of it. Then they dropped down to League One. They have a massive clear out, a massive rebrand, and ultimately, even the executives, I think they took an executive from Bristol City and made kind of moneyball signings and interesting deals in the Championship, and they got double. If you get double promotions out of League One to the Championship to the Premier League, that I have to give them a B minimum. And also, it was a tough league last season, and the fact they made it through the automatics as well is huge for them. They had a late season burst at the beginning of 2024 to get them out of the Championship early doors, and fair play to Ipswich, because really. And actually, I think they've given it a go in the transfer market. I mean, the Liam Delap deal now looks genius, because even if they get relegated, they're going to get big money for Liam Delap and a few others as well. I like the fact they've given it a go. They're not lying down like Southampton are. But ultimately, Ipswich, 2 wins all season so far. I think I just look at them sometimes still a little bit naive. Not as naive as Southampton, but just a touch naive. I'm going to have to give Ipswich an A, though, because to get promoted for a club like that, who have been famously not in the Premier League, famously struggling to get out of the Championship back into the Premier League, I think it's a massive, massive achievement, and that happened in 2024. This current form, they still got a chance to stay in the league, Ipswich, but it's getting harder every week. I'm going to give Ipswich an A, but let me know what you think in the comments down below. Southampton, we're going to give them a D. Moving on to Manchester City. Man City, for me, You win the Premier League, get to the FA Cup final. The approach to the FA Cup final was really poor. People were kind of celebrating the idea that these lads were going out and getting smashed up after the Premier League win. I get, who am I to criticise players for letting off steam, particularly not just the Premier League this season for Man City, but this year for Man City, but 4 in a row, the treble, how much pressure that must have put on them. The FA Cup final the previous year with that huge win against Manchester United. But still, it felt like the application in that final wasn't right. And maybe it was like the early signs of what could happen if City, took our foot off the gas. And that's happened. So the money in the squad, despite Rodri's injury, despite selling Alvarez, despite all these guys leaving or being injured, you still feel that it has to be a little bit better than where City currently are, which is 7th. It's not a million miles away from the top 4. It's not an utter embarrassment. But the last 11 games have completely blotted out what was actually a good start to 2024 in the knockout stage of the Champions League. A penalty kick away from the Champions League semi-finals. FA Cup final. Premier League win. I have to give Man City an A. I mean, you're an absolute knob if you're sat there and saying the Premier League, winning the Premier League, the best league in the world, isn't at least an A. It just is for any club at any point. Fulham, you have to keep it brief with Fulham. They are absolutely fantastic, well run. They got a great manager. They got a great left back who's going to be world class one day. You have to keep. If Fulham are in the league and they're pushing for Europe, with a couple of good transfers away potentially in January of being in Europe, you have to give them at least a bit. I might give them an A. I like the way they compete, and I like Marco Silva massively. Aston Villa, I mean, they're beating up Bayern Munich in the Champions League. They're getting into the Champions League for the first time in decades for them, the European Cup proper. It's unbelievable. They're so well run, in my opinion. I'm not a massive fan of the ticket prices that I've seen for certain games at home. And obviously that's the American slant on the ownership of Aston Villa. But ultimately, if you're beating up Bayern Munich, you're competing in Europe. You're not just in Europe, they're competing in the Champions League to be in the later stages of it. They've lost Douglas Luiz. I think the PSR thing has been really tight on them in particular. Onana's come in has been absolutely fantastic. I love Onana massively. They've still got Emi Martinez. You look at someone like Duran, who's just turning into this unbelievable player. Adriano 2.0. I mean, he's got an unbelievable left foot. Have to give Aston Villa an A. Brighton and Hove Albion. I mean, for me, as an understander of where they came from a few years ago, they had a greyhound racetrack around the stadium. They were very, very in very, very dire straits. Let's be completely real, Brighton, in terms of their ownership, and Bloom's done an unbelievable job. So any season Brighton stay in the league, in my opinion, they get at least a B from me, because it's unbelievable where they are, and they're turning themselves into an unbelievable force. Hertzler was the right addition after their previous manager went to Marseille. I've forgotten his name. Is it Zaribi? I've forgotten his name. Weird. Okay, I shouldn't have drunk last night. But ultimately, Hertzler's come in. He's a breath of fresh air. I mean, he's absolutely outrageous. And Cisco, I like. Danny Welbeck's pulling up trees, doing unbelievable things. They keep this squad. They sell a couple of players every now and then. They just keep it going. You have to give Brighton a B. But I think they'll be looking. I think their fans will be looking. Can we win an FA Cup? Can we do what Portsmouth did? Can we do what Swansea did in the League Cup? Try and have just our moment, our generation, our moment. Can we do it in 2025? Brentford, again, it's very similar to Brighton. They're a very, very similar club in so many levels, in terms of the size of the club, in terms of a kind of small but passionate fan base, in terms of them not being a traditional Premier League club, but they deserve to be where they are. They've lost arguably their best ever player in Ivan Toney, helped them get out of the Championship in the first place and kept them in the Premier League, then sells him for decent money. And then Mbeumo comes in and takes his place and does unbelievably well in terms of taking on the mantle for Brentford. You have to give Brentford a B. Tottenham currently sitting 12th in the Premier League, 1 win in 5. They concede goals. It's not fun anymore. It's just embarrassing watching this football club. Like, it's not fun anymore. It's just not, is it? You're just looking at his club and you feel like it's like his laissez-faire attitude to defending, which is just as justified as a part of football as anything else. And it's just like Werner coming back in. Solanke's a good transfer. I like it. It's a lot of good transfers, not great transfers for Tottenham Hotspur. They still got Forster playing between the sticks, trying to kick it out. I mean, I don't think they've progressed. They should be a lot higher at the table. I know it's ironic me saying that, but City have won 4 Premier League titles. This Spurs side still aren't running a particular way to be a serious outfit. To be Aston Villa, whatever you say about Aston Villa, Newcastle United, we'll talk about them in a minute. Serious outfits. Like, they're trying to be ambitious. It feels like Spurs aren't serious for whatever reason. It's just a bit of a laugh. Have to give Tottenham a C. West Ham United, it's a very strange appointment, isn't it, Lopetegui for David Moyes? Because basically he's the Spanish version of David Moyes. I thought Lopetegui would come in and be a bit more extravagant with his play. At least they've kept Jared Bowen. Obviously, incredibly sad news about Antonio. So it's a bit of a strange one for West Ham United. It seems a little bit flat at points for West Ham. I don't know what their fans expect. They're not going to be winning a cup this season. They're not going to be in European football. Maybe David Moyes should have stayed, but what do I know? I have to give West Ham a C. On to Liverpool. They won the League Cup with the kids, if you don't forget that, right at the start of the season. So you have to give them some credit there on some level. But ultimately, if a new manager comes in like Arne Slot, and he ultimately has the best start to a campaign I've ever seen from a big club in the Premier League ever. Because when I was a kid, Alex Ferguson was at Manchester United, so there's no transfer of power when I was a kid. Chelsea aren't really a big club in the same way Liverpool are, but when Jose Mourinho came in, instant success there. Guardiola took a year at Manchester City, again, not a big club in the same way Liverpool is. It might be comparable to me when Zidane went into Real Madrid, started winning Champions League straight away. It might be something like that. I mean, Arne Slot's come into a big club with massive expectations, with a side that fell off a little bit. The back end of last season, it fell off a little bit, and the belief wasn't there to get over the line in the Premier League. A side that were in the Europa League because of a poor season prior as well. They've kept Salah. I know there's a bit of an issue around it, but currently Van Dijk, Trent, and Salah still at the club, doing unbelievably well, and Salah in particular is still there. He's the best player in the world, playing at Liverpool, and he's going to win them the Premier League. They're top of the Premier League. They've won the League Cup at the start of the season. It's an A+ for Liverpool. It has to be. And ultimately, they've not spent any money. They spent less money than Birmingham City in the summer. Birmingham City. Jay Stansfield cost more than Liverpool's entire expenditure in a summer transfer window when they were going for things in the Champions League, when they had a new manager coming in that would have wanted his stamp on things. And maybe it's worked out. Maybe keeping Gakpo and Nunes and Diaz, players that got a lot to prove, that want to start week in, week out, that are challenging each other to start. Curtis Jones, you look at Joe Gomez, you look at someone like Quansah when he comes back into the fray. Konate. A lot of these guys have got things to prove to Arne Slot, to the fans, and the fans will know how good they are. All I'm saying is there's a hunger in this Liverpool side that I think must be very, very exciting for Liverpool. So you've got to say fair play to them. It's an A+. Arsenal came up short in the Premier League title race, came up short in the Champions League, came up short in the summer transfer window, Raheem Sterling and Moreno. And when we saw Arsenal against Ipswich, you see Havertz in the left-hand side of the attacking mid. You see Moreno not really starting in recent weeks. So you feel suddenly actually, and Sterling not really available to play now that Saka's injured. Those two transfers don't necessarily, well, they look terrible. They look absolutely terrible. This should be the period of time where Moreno's starting, and you don't need to drop Kai Havertz back into the midfield, where Sterling should be coming in to the right-hand side or the left-hand side and play Martinelli off the right. The fact that Sterling's not available and has been poor all season, hasn't scored yet, it's a terrible transfer. It's taking up room in the changing room for someone that isn't going to be there long-term. Bit of a mercenary, with all due respect. He's on loan. I love Raheem Sterling, but clearly it's the wrong move. It's clearly the wrong move for Arsenal, and it was a big move. If they get that right, if they bring in Lookman, if they bring in Vlahovic, they bring in Ivan Toney, anyone they would have been linked to, any forward, a left forward, a right forward, a striker, whoever, it creates a lot more danger when Arsenal are going into these big games, a lot more momentum. They should be closer to Liverpool than they are. I'm sorry. I'm not asking them to be above Liverpool, but they should be a lot closer. It should be 42 points for Liverpool, 39-40 for Arsenal. And Arsenal just feel like a little bit off of it. Have to give them a B. Chelsea Football Club, only a few more. If you made it this far, make sure you subscribe to the channel. Chelsea, they spent 1.4 billion quid. They're still an underdog in the Premier League title race. The Fulham result was poor. Last season, it felt a little... It got better at the start of 2024 under Poch. It did feel a little bit better. It was a shock to me when they sacked him. Enzo Maresca does feel like the right fit, though. I think it's working. It feels a little bit smoother. And I do like Chelsea. A lot of their players, Lavia, Caicedo, Jackson, Cole Palmer is... Again, I think he's top 5 players in the world, top 10 players in the world. He's unbelievable. And the fact they've kept him, they put them on these massive contracts, actually looks like it's paying dividends. Because if these players come good... A lot of criticism. If these players come bad, then we can debate it and say, why are they on 8-year contracts? What if they come good? They get fixed in, and there's a long-term security thing for Chelsea. With these assets, they get to keep them for a massive amount of time. Cole Palmer's there. It's going to be hard to get him out. Real Madrid and Man City would have to break the transfer record to get him out of the club. So it is paying dividends on some level. But they feel like they're a million miles away from winning the Premier League. And I don't know if they're going to do it next season, because Man City will definitely improve. I think Arsenal can definitely improve. Liverpool will be there as well. And you think, actually, are they going to win it next season? Then it's the season after, and you're talking 2027. Then you're thinking it's been 10 years since they won the Premier League. 10 years for Chelsea. So it's been failure on that regard. The players coming in have been fantastic. I like Maresca a lot, but then losing to Fulham, not having the ability to see out a game like that, not having the experience, spending 1.4 billion quid and still having Tosin at the back with Colwill, with all due respect. They're not top level. They're not world-class defenders. Sanchez in the sticks. So I think we have to give Chelsea, lost the cup final as well, the League Cup final. Going to have to give Chelsea, I'm going to have to give them a C. Sorry. Nottingham Forest, they're amazing. They're absolutely amazing. They got the Nuno Espirito Santo deal right. Milinkovic, fantastic. You look at Callum Hudson-Odoi, fantastic. Alanga, fantastic. They got an unbelievable side. Chris Wood still kicking it about, scoring unbelievable amount of goals every single week. You have to give Nottingham Forest an A. I can't believe how good they are. They're definitely in the conversation to be in the Champions League next season. Let me know what you think in the comments about Nottingham Forest, though. It's unbelievable. 4 wins in a row now. Newcastle United. I think a lot of people slept on Newcastle United. I want a big fat apology from everyone, because I backed Eddie Howe. In the last few years, his points accumulation has been up there with anyone else. I think he's 5th in the last 5 years for points accrued in the Premier League. And obviously he's been there for that amount of time, and he's done unbelievably well. He's kept Bruno. He's kept Isaac. He's still got a spine that I still think is a little bit weak. To be punching in that 5th position where they currently sit, going into the new year, it's unbelievable. They have to win a cup. I think they'll be disappointed with maybe certain cup exits in 2024. They have to be pushing on to try and win something major. It's been a long time. We're talking close to a century since they've won anything major. And don't give me pre-season friendlies and stuff like that. I'm talking a major FA Cup, league title. We're close to 100 years since they've won anything. So Newcastle United, 2025, they have to go. They're good enough to win something big. They really are. And the fans would be amazing at a Wembley, for example, in a final, in a semi-final. I have to give Newcastle an A, though. They're just punching above their weight with what I see on the pitch. And then they got Isaac, Bruno. They have to keep them. But at the moment, they're there. You have to give them a massive grade. And finally, Bournemouth. I mean, it's unbelievable. They lose Solanke. Semenyo is absolutely fantastic. He really is. Clivert's been fantastic. They got so many players that you just think, are they championship? And Areola's turning these guys into absolute world beaters. I think someone will come in for Semenyo. Maybe in January. I think Arsenal should be looking at someone like Semenyo. But someone will come in for Semenyo. They'll sell him for 50, 60, 70 million pounds. Honestly. And it'll just be the kid at left back, Kerkez, is unbelievable. I just look at Bournemouth. I think they must be pound for pound the best run club in Premier League football, because Brighton are a little bit bigger fan base, bigger stadium. Bournemouth, I can't believe where they were. I mean, Eddie Howe saved them from literal liquidation, administration, going out of the Football League, and now they're in the European positions. They've got a justified chance of winning, getting into a position to get into the European football. Bournemouth, it's a minor miracle. It really is. Have to give Bournemouth an A. I think they've been absolutely exceptional. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. Liverpool, Man City reactions coming up as well. And I'll see you very, very soon.